and welcome my lovely listeners to the final part of My Hotel Has a 13th Floor by Dustin Bragg. This is part 6, technically. It's also technically part 8. It is the 6th chapter, the 8th part of the story. Down in the description, you will find a link for Dustin Bragg's novel, Slappy's Diner. I highly, highly recommend you check it out. Yeah, this is My Hotel Has a 13th Floor, part 6. It's the final part, and I think we're just going to jump into it. So, enjoy. As soon as I woke up and saw what Taylor had posted, I bolted out the door. The sun was already down, meaning she had had more than just a few hours lead on me. I sped to the hotel, and from the moment I was bathed in those artificial lights, I could feel the slimy chill crawling through my bones. I rushed through the glass door and wasn't at all surprised to find that they opened into an unfamiliar lobby. It was dimly lit, the walls lined with newspaper. I could read them now. Another girl missing. City considers curfew as missing person count rises. Local killer still at large. Matthew Teagues killed, terror over. Each picture accompanying the article, be it the girls or Teagues himself, they all had their eyes replaced with the dead, beady, black eyes of Conan, Willie. The cold gray floor was spattered with blood, and when I saw the body lying there, its limbs contorted in unnatural ways, reminiscent of a rag doll that had been carelessly tossed to the floor, I immediately thought it had to be Taylor. Then I recognized that it was male, a lanky guy, whose glasses sat askew on his pale face. I was looking at the body of Maddie Teagues. As I crossed the room, eager to find Taylor and get the hell out of this godforsaken hotel, I saw that behind the desk, sitting on the stool, was the severed head of a brunette girl. A trickle of blood cutting a trail down her chin. Her eyes were blinking, and her mouth twitched as a gurgle sound was produced from her non-existent throat. The stool slowly began to turn with a soft metallic creak. I shivered, and then nearly shit myself when I felt the firm clutch on my ankle. I quickly jerked my eyes downward and saw that Maddie's mouth was spastically opening and closing, much like the puppet the last time I'd seen him. He released his grasp, and I pulled my leg free just as the body closed his fist again. He opened and closed it in rapid succession, and I recognized what was going on. He was operating a ventriloquist dummy that wasn't there. I turned away from that grisly sight. I slowly took steps toward the elevator, and from the corner of my eye I could see the pool. The water was churning, waves of what looked like flailing arms were tossing about in the torrent. I reached the elevator, which was tagged with the haunting graffiti. "Think again, asshole," it read. No sooner than I finished reading that message, I heard the whistling. A melodic, somber tune that I couldn't place. I glanced down the hallway in the direction of the sound, and I saw a door creep open. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, even when the mask stepped out. It was draped in its blanket, and I recalled my first trip to the 13th floor, when I had seen the thing on the bed moving. It was slowly moving toward me, and I decided to move before it got too close. I refused to turn around and face the thing as I made my way to the stairs, even when the whistling got louder. Even when I felt what I knew was the warm, wet breath on the nape of my neck. I had made it to the stairwell, and when I put my hand on the door, the whistling stopped. I briefly thought about turning and running, but somehow I knew that if I did, there would be no door. I had an awful feeling that the building was funneling me to where it wanted me to be. There was no going back now. I steeled myself and pulled the door open. What greeted me was a moving wall of billions of tiny spiders. They poured through the opening, covering me in their black, wriggling legs, crawling through my hair, up my nose, and out through my mouth. I felt their tiny fangs sink into my tender eyeballs as they feasted on my skin. And in that moment, I felt what it was like to be buried, entombed in the earth, helpless to stop nature from claiming my body. Just when I thought that all of my flesh had been chewed free of me by those awful gnashing teeth, my eyes opened. No spiders in sight. Instead, I saw a ghostly, semi-translucent Taylor ascending the stairs. A wide trail of blood followed her up with each step she took. It looked like an invisible body was being dragged up at the same time. I could still almost feel all of those tiny legs on me and those sharp teeth, yet I knew that I had to follow. I watched as the ghostly form passed through the doorway to the second floor, and the blood trail abruptly stopped there as well. I pushed it open slowly, weary of another wave of spiders. There were none. Instead, I saw two other not quite there ghostly figures. I saw that I was standing in Roger's office downstairs. I recognized the mustachioed figure as Roger plucked a thick cigar out of his mouth. The other one, sitting across from him, began to speak. And that's when I was able to place him as well, despite the fact that he was fully dressed this time. The voice was clear, but sounded miles away. "Damn it, Roger, I don't know why you didn't consult us about this. The agency shouldn't be involved. They'll get too close. And what the hell were you thinking about doing with the body that came down the chute, huh? Yankee Doodle, man. I don't want no part of this shit anymore. This is all too weird. The first few girls, yeah, they were fun. But this last one, and the puppet guy, I can't sleep anymore. I hate even coming here. I want out," the bulbous guy was saying as Roger continued to suck the cigar.
You think any of us wanted this? Do you honestly think that I would have let things go down the way they did if I had any inkling it would have turned out like this? Fuck's sake, Sam. I've got enough on my plate right now. The agency is the least of our problems. They know what we are but have no interest in anything but that damned vending machine. Now, the new auditor I hired last year, after that girl quit, he is making me nervous. He's been going through the old records. I'm going to have to get rid of them. I think I can store them in the hidden hotel, even though I can't stand that place. If he keeps snooping, I've got an idea of how to handle it.
With that, Roger snuffed out his cigar. The man he called Sam spoke again. "That's your business from here on out, Roger. Like I said, I'm out."
Yes, you are.
Roger leaned back in his chair. Just then, the weirdest feeling of my life struck. The specter walked into the room through me, and I could plainly see the fat cop that had blown his brains out in the lobby was stretching a thin wire between his hands. Sam saw this too, and began to blubber and beg the two men not to do what they were going to do. The cop looked remorseful at first, but after he had wrapped the thing around Sam's neck, I could see him grinning from ear to ear as he choked the life out of the man. "I always knew you were a pussy, Sammy," the cop whispered, and Roger chuckled as Sam's hands stopped scratching at the wire cutting into his neck and went limp, falling to his sides. The ghosts of the past became like fog, losing form and dissipating. Before me now was a hallway. The office faded along with the visions. A knocking came from the door behind me. The message was clear: keep moving. So I did. Each doorway I passed produced its own knocking, softly at first, almost unnoticeable, but growing even louder with each one I crossed. The elevator halfway down was wrapped in ancient, ragged-looking police tape. The door was opening a quarter of the way and closing with a soft metallic clunk, almost completely drowned out by the loud knocking coming from all around me. I glanced inside and saw a boy sitting cross-legged inside, right in the center of the elevator car. He looked around 11 or 12 years old, and even though he was skinless and his exposed muscle were shiny and wet, I could see the gift box in his lap. I watched as he carefully removed the lid, revealing a puppet, made of sinew and tendons, but unmistakably Conan. The puppet's black hole eyes jerked in my direction, and the boy's eyes followed. Then they landed on me, and I saw that his eyes were the same. No windows to the soul there. No, they were windows to nothing. Emptiness. I trekked on, unnerved, afraid, but determined not to leave Taylor in a place like this. I couldn't stand the thought of anyone suffering in this hell, let alone someone I cared for. So I walked past the louder and louder knocking. By the time I reached the end, the doors were trembling and sounded as if they would crack with each of the powerful blows. Just as I arrived at the end of the hallway, it hit me that I had nowhere left to go. But, almost as if on cue, a bolt of lightning ripped through the sky outside the window. Its flash illuminated bright enough for me to see what I at first assumed was my reflection in the window's glass, until I noticed that it didn't raise its hand to shield its eyes when I did. I took another step closer. Moving my face toward the glass, I saw that the entity was jet black. I attempted one more step, but I realized my foot wasn't moving. I tugged and yanked, trying to get my foot off the floor, but it wouldn't budge. I looked down to see that both of my feet were submerged in a thick, gelatinous substance that had replaced the floor. I returned my eyes to see that the shadowy reflection was gone. In its place, a much clearer picture. It wasn't me, but Leah. She stood in my place in the reflection, trapped, like me. She looked horrified that she was unable to move, trying in vain to free her feet. It was then that the two of us began to sink into the liquid floor. In unison, we began to panic. Her movements mirrored mine. I gave her one more look, and she looked back. I can only assume that her horrified face mimicked mine. But before I could wrap my mind around the fact that Leah and I were doppelgangers in that moment, the floor sucked me in completely. I sank through the sticky substance, unable to draw a breath, feeling like I had been swallowed by the hotel, and that it was digesting me. I continued to slither downward, feeling the life being squeezed out of me. Then, I wasn't. I found myself lying face up, back in the lobby, but I was in the exact same position that Maddie Teague's body was when I had entered. I managed to pull myself to my feet, and as I did so, I saw the fat cop phantom form walk through the door.
Thank you for coming by.
I heard Roger say from behind the desk. He extended a hand to the officer, who gladly shook it.
The others?
Roger asked through a smile. All taken care of, the cop said. He mouthed playfully D-E-A-D, which garnered a smile from Roger.
Good. No more incidents like Sam then. I'm glad I have one person I can trust. Now, on to Derek, that little prick. The thorn in my side needs to be dealt with. All he's been talking about lately is the 13th floor this, and puppet that. I don't think he knows much, but I don't want to lose ends anymore. I've moved it in a new place and sold the other one. Of course, I bought it myself, under a fake name. I've got a plan for Derek I think he'll like. His last day is today. I don't think his replacement will be a problem. I want you to pull Derek over on his way out of town. No one will think any of it. Arrest him, take him to my old house and into the basement. You know what to do. I'll take it from here. Oh, the copy bodies are down there. I have a theory. If a man gets hungry enough.
Roger grinned sadistically, and the cop let out a laugh that said, "You old dog, you. I've taken care of everything as far as the other officers go. As far as they're concerned, anyone calling about someone named Leah Harper is considered a prank. They'll disregard. Also, I've made sure there's no trace of that bitch ever setting foot in this city. Soon, we'll be able to pick back up where we left off."
Exactly. After you have handled Derek, meet me at the lake.
The scene began to fade as Roger spoke. He went to the lake, but he never came back. Isn't that right? A voice from behind me uttered. I spun around fast and saw a bizarre scene. Unlike the other visions, these figures were solid, tangible, and the one in the rabbit suit was definitely aware of my presence. "Isn't that right?" he said again, more loudly, emphasizing each word. He struck the man kneeling in front of him with the butt of a pistol, knocking him to the floor. I could see he was badly bleeding, battered, one eye swollen shut, and his mustache had been all but ripped from his face. But it was definitely Roger.
Cut.
Roger coughed and spat a glob of blood out onto the floor.
Cut his brakes. No more trail. No one left to turn on me.
He choked out through gasps. "A hyuk, hyuk, hyuk," the bunny man said, no joy in his mock laugh. "All the loose ends tied up, you fuck," he said as he kicked one of his furry feet into Roger's gut, causing the man to howl in pain. The bunny man pointed the gun at me. "Whoa, hang on," I said, raising my hands. "What the hell are you even doing here? I thought you'd seen enough to stay away," he spoke, removing his mask. "You?" I said, identifying the man in the bunny suit as the very same man who had been watching Taylor and I in the diner, and the same man who had saved our lives. He cocked his weapon. "This bastard is about to show me exactly where he and his sick fuck friends hid my little girl's body. The question I have for you, are you going to stand in my way?" The bunny man asked, and I knew by his tone that he was ready to shoot me if I answered wrong. I looked down at my boss, cowering and struggling to breathe, and wondered if his victims looked as pitiful to him as he did to me right now. I'm just trying to get my friend out of here, I said with a sigh. The bunny man waved his gun in a let's go motion. The redhead, right? Well, you're staying with us. I don't want any variables until this piece of shit takes me where I want to go. If we find your girlfriend, you two can haul ass. Till then, move it. I followed, cautiously lowering my hands as the bunny man dragged Roger to his feet.
This psycho kidnapped me. Justin, he broke into my house.
Roger stuttered. The bunny man raised his hand to strike, but stopped when I spoke up. Save it, Roger. I've seen what you've done. I looked deep into the one eye not completely swollen shut. You deserve everything he's done to you, and I swear to God, if Taylor isn't in perfect fucking health, I'll personally tear you apart, and if there's anything left, I'm sure he'll finish the job. With that, Roger looked at his feet. Where to? The bunny man asked, putting the barrel of his gun into the small of Roger's back.
Elevator,
he said, and the two began in that direction as I followed behind. It's out, I added, just as we rounded the corner and I saw that I was lying. The graffiti was nowhere to be found. Roger pressed the call button, and in a matter of seconds the door slid open and the three of us boarded. He pushed the second floor button, and the bunny man leaned in right next to Roger's ear and whispered, "If you try anything, you're dead. You're a sick piece of shit, you know that? I saw Derek, and not in one of the hotel's visions. Flesh and blood. I hope you burn in hell for that," I said as the elevator rose. Roger didn't say a word. We heard the ding as the elevator doors opened to the dark hallway. This is the one I'd been on twice before, the 13th. I didn't know how I knew, but I knew. We stepped out, and I could hear the rushing air all around me.
Here,
Roger muttered, leading us to the laundry chute. He opened it and gestured inside. The bunny man looked at Roger, skeptically, and then took a step toward the chute. He craned his neck to peer inside, momentarily letting his guard down, allowing Roger to swiftly grab his arm and rip the gun free. The bunny man turned, his face awash with surprise and anger. Before any one of us could fully comprehend what was happening, Roger had shoved me to the ground and pulled the trigger, sending a bullet tearing through the bunny man's shoulder, sending him stumbling backward into the wall, where he slid down into a sitting position. "Where is my daughter?" he screamed, pressing his hand into his shoulder, the bright white fur of his suit becoming crimson.
I'll tell you exactly what happened, you stupid shit. And then you...
He pointed the pistol at me.
And you are going down that chute. You're right. I killed her. And yeah, her body is somewhere here. But you wanna know the truth? I don't fucking know where the bitch's bones are. They disappeared when I shoved them into that chute. Just like you two. Now get up. Who's first?
He grinned, and I could see that several teeth had been knocked out, and the sockets were caked with blood. The bunny man was seething. He gritted his teeth as he rose to his feet.
How good of you to volunteer,
Roger said snidely.
Now, in you go.
But before he could say another word, every door in the hallway swung open. The soft glow of every TV cast a surreal glow throughout. Roger waved the gun wildly in all directions. I could see into the room directly behind him, and it was an all too familiar sight. Willie stared intently at the back of Roger's head. No humor in his shiny wooden face. It was stoic, focused. I could feel the dark eyes coming from every room on the floor, flooding the hallway, touching everything the television glow touched.
No, 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 no,
Roger was shouting, his attention on the figure stepping out of the room at the end of the hallway draped in its blanket, slowly creeping into the hallway. Another exited from the room opposite the first, and two more identical creatures joined. I looked back into the room closest to us and saw one of the things was moving toward the open door from there too. Roger began firing the bunny man's gun at the phantoms, round after round tearing through the blanket, spewing a black liquid from whatever unholy terror resided underneath. But the shots did nothing to slow the beasts. Their methodical stride never broke, and after 5 shots, the loud bangs were replaced with soft, pathetic clicks. He chucked the gun at one of the creatures that had nearly closed the gap and turned in an attempt to flee. It brought him face to face with a monster that had come from the room behind him, and as he stood nose to nose with the thing, all of them stopped marching. The hallway was dead silent, save for his quivering breath and the clicking of his wristwatch as his hands trembled. The thing slowly raised its arms, peeling the blanket off of itself, revealing what was underneath. It was a tall, lanky man whose glasses sat perfectly on the bridge of his nose. Matty Teagues himself stood less than an inch away from Roger, who had begun to cry. I imagined being face to face with the man he'd had killed and framed for Roger's own crimes was quite the experience. Teagues leaned in even closer to the point that his sharp nose had to be touching Roger's, and whispered a single word, a word that I could feel the pleasure drip from, a word spoken so joyously that I know it had to taste decadent oozing from Matty's mouth. Boo! Matty smiled, causing Roger to absolutely lose it. He screamed and stumbled backwards, the only thing keeping him from falling on his ass were the rotted hands that wrapped around his neck. "Leah!" the bunny man shouted, but she didn't acknowledge. Her attention was on choking the life from Roger as she slowly dragged him backwards. Matty Teagues raised a hand and flapped it in a bye-bye gesture as the awful, decayed Leah began to crawl into the chute, still dragging the struggling Roger. He desperately tried to scream, tried to fight, but it was fruitless. His last moments were spent clawing at the slick, metal slides of the square box, tearing his fingernails off as he was forced down, along with Leah. And then he was gone. Matty's eyes turned to the bunny man and I, and he pointed. I followed his finger to the end of the hallway. The rest of the figures, still cloaked in their blankets, lined the hallways, blocking all doorways but one. The bunny man pulled me to my feet and jerked his head in the direction Matty was pointing. We took slow steps, painfully aware that Matty was following us. At the end of the hallway was a familiar room, the second-floor storage room, the dark version, the door standing wide open. I could see boxes with Taylor's bubbly handwriting, but nothing else. I entered along with the bunny man. We stood there for a moment, confusion in our faces as we exchanged a look. Then, we heard the door close behind us. "What the hell?" the bunny man muttered. I don't... Wait! I said, remembering what Taylor had told me. I shot over to the wall and began frantically pressing on the panels. "What exactly are..." the bunny man started, but the popping sound interrupted him as I pulled open the secret door. Inside was a little, office-like room, but there were no chairs. The television had the same serious-faced image of the puppet. There was also a body in the center of the room. I rushed in and knelt down beside Taylor. Her face was cold as I placed my hand on her cheeks. Taylor, I said in a soft tone. Her eyes fluttered. I lightly tapped her cheek until she started to come to. She quickly sat up as she was regaining herself. She shoved her hands into my face, obviously not recognizing me at first. I hushed her, trying to make it clear that I wasn't going to hurt her.
"Justin, what are you... I'm sorry. I thought I could get in and out without crossing over to the 13th floor. But as soon as I tried to leave, I was here,"
she said, starting to sob. "Shh, Taylor, it's all right. We're going home. Come on, get up," I said, helping her to her feet.
"Wait, this is what I came for. I got it, Justin. I got the tape that shows that Matty was innocent,"
she exclaimed, delicately removing a small tape from her pocket and showing it to me. "We'll get it to the cops as soon as we get out of here," I told her. "And I think I can do that for you," the bunny man spoke. Taylor looked at him, contorting her face, trying to understand why the man who had been watching at the diner was sporting a gunshot wound and dressed in a bunny costume sans mask. "What?" I asked, not sure of what he was saying. "I think if I close this door, the two of you will open back up into the regular world. I think that's how this works," he said, not as sure of what he was saying as he wanted to be. "Even if that is the case, how are you going to get through?" I questioned. "I'm not coming. I'm staying here until I find my daughter's remains. Now, I'm not going to argue about this. I don't have anything worth going back to, so my mind's made up," he said, and he put his hand on the door. I nodded, and he returned it, and gave me a half smile as he pulled the door closed. He was right. As soon as I pulled the door open, I was back in the normal second-floor storage room. I put Taylor's arm around my shoulder, and we exited into the hallway. Thankfully, well-lit, tacky floral wallpaper, and no puppets in sight. We hurried to the elevator and called it. It carried us down to the lobby, where I saw Mandy sitting behind the desk. Well, she was asleep behind the desk. She jolted awake, a bewildered look on her face, and she looked at her watch. You're late. Where have you been? Who's she? She asked in her confusion. Mandy, I'm sorry, but I quit, I said, and Taylor and I pushed through the glass door. So that, my lovely listeners, was the final part of My Hotel Has a 13th Floor. It's a bittersweet moment. I loved the series, and I loved how it wrapped up. So, I hope all of you enjoyed it. One more time, I want to say a huge, huge thank you to Dustin Bragg for letting me narrate this story. A huge thank you to Creep Spaghetti for narrating the lines of Raj. And another huge thank you to Patience, my other half, for narrating all the lines of Taylor. Down in the description, you'll find links to Patience's Twitter. Go follow her. You'll also find a link to Creep Spaghetti's YouTube channel and his Twitter. Go follow him and please subscribe to him. The man does amazing work. And yeah, he and I just were, in my opinion, we're great friends. I hope he feels the same. But he's a great guy. So, and then finally, down in the description, you will find a link to the novel Slappy's Diner by Dustin Bragg. If you want to continue reading stuff that Dustin has written, get that novel, check it out. Dustin is obviously an amazing author. And again, I am beyond grateful to be able to narrate the story. I genuinely appreciate it, and I cannot overstate how much I loved this series. That all said, and that all out of the way, you know the deal. Down in the description, you'll find links to my Twitter, Facebook, and subreddit, as well as a page where you can submit your own story. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. Let me know you liked it. And please hit that subscribe button, because I love all you guys, and I love doing this. So, lastly, I do intend to make a single video that spans all 8 pieces of this story. So you'll have all 8 pieces separately, and one video that spans the entirety of the series. That's probably going to be a long video. One last time, Dustin, you're a great guy. Thank you so much for letting me do this. I genuinely appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you that were along on this ride with me. I know a lot of you really, really got into the story, so hope you guys have a great day. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you on the next video, but until then, sleep well. A hyuk, hyuk, hyuk.